Scott Bessent just told a Senate committee that crypto industry insiders who oppose his regulation should, and I'm quoting him directly here, move to El Salvador. That's the Treasury Secretary of the United States telling you that if you don't like what he's building, you can leave. I want to talk about what he's building because what's being sold to you as crypto freedom legislation contains mechanisms that should concern every person who owns a single Satoshi. And I want to be specific, not conspiratorial, specific. My name is Dana Love. I have a PhD in economics. I have an MBA from Harvard. My doctorate focused on central bank lending practices. I first bought crypto in 2011. I've been CTO of Layer 1 blockchains. I've built crypto companies in payments, social networks, and real-world asset tokenization. I first lost money on a crypto investment in 2017. That's why I read legislation carefully. I learned the hard way that the gap between what they say a law does and what it actually does can cost you everything. My book is called The Token Trap. It comes out in March. Today, we're talking about something more urgent. In January of this year, Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, the largest publicly traded crypto company in the United States, flew to Davos to lobby against the Senate version of the Clarity Act. While he was there, JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon interrupted him during a coffee chat and told him he was, and I'm quoting the Wall Street Journal here, full of shit. I want you to hold that image for a moment. The face of American crypto deregulation getting dressed down by the face of American banking in a Swiss ski resort over legislation being sold to you as your financial freedom. Nobody in that room was representing you. Now here's the background. The Clarity Act passed the House in July 2025 with 294 votes. By late 2025, Senate passage was widely seen as inevitable. Then, on January 14th, Armstrong posted that Coinbase could not support the bill as written. He called several provisions, and I'm using his word, catastrophic. The Senate Banking Committee postponed its scheduled markup the next morning. One man's post killed the bill, for now. What was Armstrong actually objecting to? Three things publicly. A de facto ban on tokenized equities, provisions he said gave government unlimited access to your financial records, and a ban on stablecoin yield, which, not coincidentally, represents about 20% of Coinbase's revenue. Notice what's in that list. Financial surveillance. That's not a political talking point. That's the CEO of Coinbase. I know, but Dana, the bill will make crypto a commodity. No SEC oversight, just CFTC. So what's the problem? Well, yes, Clarity makes Bitcoin and Ethereum commodities, with an asterisk. And yes, commodities are overseen by the CFTC. But here's where the commodity comparison becomes important. Gold is a commodity. Oil is a commodity. Wheat is a commodity. When you buy gold, the Treasury doesn't require your broker to file a suspicious activity report. FinCEN doesn't monitor your transaction. The Bank Secrecy Act doesn't apply to the metal itself. Bitcoin is being called a commodity. The Clarity Act hands jurisdiction over Bitcoin spot markets to the CFTC, the commodities regulator. That's the pro-crypto win everybody's celebrating. But read what Alex Thorne, head of research at Galaxy Digital, one of the largest crypto asset managers in the world, wrote about the Senate draft the same week Armstrong pulled out. He called it the most significant expansion of government financial surveillance power since the 2001 USA PATRIOT Act. They have achieved substantial expansions of government surveillance and enforcement capabilities, Thorne wrote that. That's not a senator. That's not a regulator. That's the research head of a firm with billions in crypto assets under management saying this bill, the one being sold as crypto freedom legislation, is the biggest surveillance expansion in a quarter century. No other commodity in American history has been classified as a commodity and simultaneously subjected to Bank Secrecy Act compliance, FinCEN transaction monitoring, and Treasury Special Measures Authority. Gold doesn't get that treatment. Oil doesn't get that treatment. Obviously, wheat doesn't get that treatment. Bitcoin is being called a commodity so the institutions can own it cleanly. It's being regulated like a bank account so the government can watch everything you do with it. That's not deregulation. That's capture with better branding. Let me tell you about a tool called a special measure under Section 311 of the USA PATRIOT Act. It's administered by FinCEN, the Treasury's Financial Intelligence Unit. It gives the Treasury Secretary the authority to designate a financial institution, a transaction, or an account as a primary money laundering concern. When that designation happens, U.S. financial institutions are required to freeze transactions, block accounts, and sever correspondent banking relationships within 30 days. No court order required at the point of designation. The judicial review comes after, if you can afford to wait for it. In 2005, Treasury designated a small bank in Macau called Banco Delta Asia under Section 311. The allegation was North Korean money laundering. Within weeks, banks stopped doing business with it worldwide. The bank was effectively dead before any court reviewed anything. Here's what came out later. An independent audit by Ernst & Young, commissioned by the Macau government, found no evidence that the bank had facilitated money laundering. No criminal charges were ever filed. The sanctions were quietly lifted in 2020, 15 years later. And according to subsequent reporting, U.S. regulators specifically chose Banco Delta Asia because it was small enough to destroy without causing broader financial disruption. They needed to demonstrate that their weapon worked. They picked the smallest target available. That is Section 311 in practice. Designation first, evidence optional, recovery measured in decades, if at all. Now, here's what the Genius Act did. It explicitly designated stablecoin issuers as financial institutions under the Bank Secrecy Act. Not metaphorically, legally. The same category as your bank, which means stablecoin issuers are now subject to Treasury Special Measures Authority. Your USDC issuer can be Section 311. Your USDT issuer can be Section 311. The pipe that 75% of crypto trading volume runs through can be frozen at the Treasury Secretary's discretion within 30 days before a court says a word. And here's the question the Clarity Act still hasn't answered. Does a crypto wallet count as a financial institution under this framework? Does a DeFi protocol? Does a self-custody address? The Genius Act drew the line at stablecoin issuers. The Senate Clarity Act draft, the one Armstrong called catastrophic, the one Galaxy's research head called the biggest surveillance expansion since the Patriot Act, was pushing that line even further toward DeFi, toward protocols, toward you. Bessent chairs the committee that decides where the line goes next. The question isn't whether Treasury can freeze your crypto. It's which crypto and when. So, who actually benefits from this architecture? Not you. Let's establish that first. Under the Genius Act, your stablecoin is now a regulated instrument with mandatory reporting. Under the draft Senate Clarity Act, your DeFi protocol may be subject to FinCEN classification as a money services business. Your self-custody wallet sits in a legal gray zone that Bessent's committee hasn't finished drawing. The institutions benefit, and here's how you know how. BlackRock didn't fight this bill. Fidelity didn't fight this bill. Every major asset manager running Bitcoin ETFs, all of them CFTC-regulated entities, supported it. When the people who hold your asset support the regulation of that asset, the correct answer isn't whether the regulation is good. The question is, it's good for whom? Compliance costs money, millions of dollars, ongoing. When you mandate that level of compliance, you don't clean up an industry, you consolidate it. The firms that can afford the infrastructure stay. Everyone else quits or gets acquired. That's not consumer protection. That's a moat with regulatory concrete. Bessent said it himself in Senate testimony about the crypto insiders pushing back, and I'm quoting, "There seems to be a nihilist group in the industry who prefers no regulation over this very good regulation." And then, any market participants who don't want it should move to El Salvador. Notice the framing. If you have concerns about financial surveillance, you're a nihilist. If you want to understand what you're signing up for, you should leave the country. That's not a regulator making a policy argument. That's a gatekeeper telling you the door is closing and you can either get inside or get out. Crypto didn't fail, it was captured. And now the capture is being written into law with bipartisan support, institutional backing, and a Treasury Secretary telling anyone who objects to find another country. The legislation is called the Clarity Act, and in one sense it delivers exactly what it promises. It's very clear about who the system was built for. It wasn't you. I know what it feels like to trust a system that was designed to extract from you. In 2017, I lost money on a crypto investment that looked legitimate, had a white paper, had a community, and had people who genuinely believed in it. The gap between what it promised and what it delivered wasn't an accident. It was the architecture. What I'm describing today is different in scale, but the architecture is the same. The gap between what this legislation is marketed as, freedom for crypto, and what it actually builds, a federally supervised financial surveillance system with crypto branding, that gap is what I've spent 7 years documenting. 617 sources, 23 people who lost real money. The pattern doesn't change, the marketing does. The token trap comes out in March. It documents this pattern across the full history of crypto, from the first ICO frauds, through VC capture, through institutional takeover. There's a link in the description. If this video changed how you read the Clarity Act, please subscribe, because the CBDC question, why the government doesn't actually need to issue one, is the next video. And that argument is even more uncomfortable than this one. I'm Dana Love. Thanks for watching.